Somewhere in the depths of a Germanic forest, 3 entire Roman legions, roughly 20,000 men, are marching to their doom. The greatest military machine the ancient world had ever seen is about to be destroyed. Not by another empire, not by a superior army, but by a man who once called Rome his home. His name was Arminius. The Romans knew him as a trusted ally, a commander of auxiliary forces, even a Roman citizen with equestrian rank. But the Germanic tribes would remember him by another name, Liberator. Today, we're diving deep into the life of one of ancient history's most fascinating figures, a man who lived between 2 worlds, spoke 2 languages, and ultimately chose to wage war against the empire that raised him. This is the story of Arminius, and I promise you, some of these facts are going to surprise you. Arminius was born around 18 or 17 BCE into the Cherushi tribe, one of the most powerful Germanic tribes living in what is now northwestern Germany. His father, Segimarus, was a chieftain, essentially tribal nobility. Now here's where things get interesting right from the start. The name Arminius isn't actually Germanic, it's Latin. His real Germanic name is lost to history, though later German nationalists would call him Hermann. Some scholars believe his original name might have been something like Ermin or similar, but we simply don't know. The Romans Latinized it to Arminius, and that's the name that stuck. Here's an unusual fact that most people don't know. Arminius was sent to Rome as a hostage when he was probably just a boy, maybe around 8-10 years old. This wasn't punishment, it was standard Roman diplomacy. Rome would take the sons of allied or conquered tribal leaders as guests, educate them in Roman ways, and theoretically create a generation of leaders who would be loyal to Rome. Think about what this means. Young Arminius grew up in Rome during the reign of Augustus, the first Roman emperor. He would have walked the same streets as Virgil, Ovid, and Horace. He received a Roman military education, learning tactics, strategy, Latin, and Roman law. He wasn't treated as a prisoner, but as a privileged young nobleman. But here's something fascinating that connects to the broader ancient world. During Arminius's time in Rome, the Romans were obsessed with astrology and astronomy. The astronomer and mathematician Manilius was likely writing his Astronomica during this period. If you're interested in how ancient people understood the heavens and used celestial observations for everything from agriculture to military campaigns, I highly recommend checking out modern works like Cosmos by Carl Sagan, which puts ancient astronomical knowledge in perspective. The Romans, like their Greek predecessors, used astronomical observations to calculate time, plan campaigns, and even predict auspicious dates for battle. Arminius excelled in this Roman system. He served in the Roman military, likely in the Rhine region, commanding auxiliary forces composed of Germanic warriors. He was granted Roman citizenship, a massive honor, and even achieved equestrian rank, which placed him in the second highest social class in Rome, just below senators. Now here's an unusual detail. Arminius had a brother named Flavius, who also served Rome. But unlike Arminius, Flavius remained loyal to Rome for his entire life. In fact, Flavius lost an eye fighting for Rome and was so devoted that when the brothers later met during negotiations, they reportedly almost came to blows. Talk about a family divided. So why did Arminius turn against Rome? The sources don't give us a clear answer, but imagine being raised as a German, taken from your homeland as a child, educated as a Roman, serving in their military, and then being sent back to Germania. You're neither fully Roman nor fully German anymore. You're caught between 2 identities. And perhaps that unique position gave Arminius a perspective no one else had. Around 7 CE, Arminius returned to Germania as a commander of Cherushi auxiliary troops serving under Publius Quinctilius Varus, the Roman governor of Germania. Now, Varus was not a military man. He was an administrator who had previously governed Syria and was known for his heavy-handed taxation policies. Here's an unusual fact. Varus was married to Claudia Pulchra, a great niece of Emperor Augustus himself. This family connection probably explains why he got the Germania posting. It was seen as an important but relatively safe position. Augustus believed Germania was pacified. He was catastrophically wrong. Varus trusted Arminius completely. Why wouldn't he? Arminius was a Roman citizen, an equestrian, a proven commander. He spoke perfect Latin, understood Roman culture, and had fought for Rome. Ancient sources tell us they dined together regularly. Varus considered Arminius a friend, but Arminius was planning something unprecedented. He began secretly meeting with other Germanic tribal leaders, the Cherushi, Marsi, Chatti, Bructeri, and others. These tribes had been rivals for generations. Getting them to unite was like herding cats. But Arminius had something no other Germanic leader possessed. He knew Rome's weaknesses from the inside. Here's something most people don't realize. Germanic society was incredibly decentralized. There was no king of Germania. Each tribe had its own leaders, its own territories, its own feuds. What Arminius accomplished, forging a pan-tribal alliance, was politically revolutionary. It had never been done before on this scale. And here's an unusual detail that shows his strategic brilliance. Arminius didn't just plan a battle. He planned a conspiracy that would take months to unfold. He needed to lure 3 full legions into a vulnerable position, maintain the illusion of loyalty, coordinate multiple tribes, and strike at exactly the right moment. Meanwhile, not everyone trusted Arminius. Segestes, another Cherushi nobleman, and ironically Arminius's father-in-law, repeatedly warned Varus that Arminius was plotting treason. According to Tacitus, Segestes even recommended that Varus arrest Arminius and other tribal leaders immediately. But here's the fascinating twist. Arminius had married Segestes' daughter, Thusnelda, against her father's wishes. This wasn't just a family drama. It was a political scandal. Some historians believe Segestes' warnings to Varus might have been motivated as much by personal hatred of his son-in-law as by loyalty to Rome. Varus dismissed the warnings. Fatal mistake. September 9th, CE. Varus was leading 3 legions, 17, 18, and 99, along with 6 cohorts of auxiliary troops and 3 cavalry wings, back to winter quarters near the Rhine. That's about 20,000 soldiers, plus thousands of camp followers, servants, and families. This wasn't just an army, it was a mobile city. Arminius approached Varus with a story. There was a rebellion in a remote part of the region. Would Varus come to suppress it? The route would take them through unfamiliar territory, dense forests, narrow trails, swampy ground. But Arminius would guide them personally. Here's an unusual astronomical detail. The battle took place in early September, and recent archaeological evidence suggests the weather was terrible. Heavy rain, poor visibility. Ancient armies often consulted astronomical tables to determine auspicious times for military movements. The Romans had sophisticated astronomical knowledge, inherited from the Greeks and Babylonians. In fact, if you're fascinated by how ancient peoples used celestial observations, The Lost Art of Finding Our Way by John Edward Huth explores how navigators used stars and natural phenomena before modern instruments. But the Romans would have found September auspicious. It was typically the end of campaigning season, perfect for returning to winter quarters. They had no reason to suspect the weather would turn so viciously against them. Varus agreed. The legions began their march into what we now call the Teutoburg Forest, though the exact location was lost for centuries until discovered near Calchries in the 1980s. Once the Roman column was stretched out along narrow forest paths, and here's a crucial detail, Arminius and his auxiliary troops excused themselves, claiming they needed to gather more Germanic allied forces. Varus let them go. He still trusted Arminius completely. The trap was set. The Roman column was strung out for miles through difficult terrain. They couldn't form their traditional battle formations. The baggage train made them slow, and the weather was getting worse. Here's an unusual fact about Germanic warfare that most people don't know. The Germans didn't fight in formations like the Romans. They specialized in hit-and-run tactics, ambushes, and guerrilla warfare. The forest was their element. They knew every path, every creek, every hiding spot, and then, like thunder, the attack began. The Battle of Teutoburg Forest wasn't really a battle. It was a massacre that lasted 3 days. The Germanic warriors attacked from the trees, from behind, from the flanks. They would strike, disappear into the forest, and strike again. Here's what makes this even more remarkable. Roman legions were the most disciplined fighting force in the ancient world. They had conquered most of Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. They prided themselves on maintaining formation under any circumstances, but in the Teutoburg Forest, none of that mattered. Archaeological evidence from Calcrease tells us some gruesome details. The site is littered with Roman military equipment, swords, armor, coins, even surgical instruments. We found evidence of a massive earthwork that the Germans built to channel the Romans into a killing zone. Think about that. Arminius didn't just ambush the Romans, he engineered the battlefield. Here's an unusual detail that shows the desperation of the trapped Romans. Some soldiers tried to bury their valuables, hoping to retrieve them later. We found hordes of Roman coins deliberately hidden in the area. None of these men survived to reclaim them. On the second day, Verus attempted to break out and reach open ground where Roman tactics could prevail. But Arminius had blocked every path. The Germans had fortified the high ground. Every attempt to escape was met with another ambush. By the third day, it was over. Verus, wounded and seeing no hope, fell on his sword. His officers did the same. Some soldiers tried to surrender, but ancient sources tell us most were killed. A few, very few, managed to escape and bring news of the disaster back to the Rhine. Here's one of the most chilling details. The Germanic tribes conducted ritual sacrifices with some of the captured Romans. Archaeological evidence shows Roman officers were killed in sacred groves, their remains left as offerings to Germanic gods. This wasn't just military victory, it was religious vindication. And then there's the matter of the eagle standards. Every Roman legion carried a golden eagle standard, the aquila. It was the legion's soul. Losing an eagle was the ultimate dishonor. All 3 eagle standards were captured by the Germans. One was eventually recovered years later, but the fate of the other 2 remains one of history's mysteries. Here's an unusual fact. When news reached Rome, Augustus was so devastated he allegedly banged his head against the walls of his palace, shouting, "Quintili var legionis rede." Quintilius Varus, give me back my legions. The emperor, who had presided over Rome's greatest expansion, was reportedly never the same. Rome never again raised legions with the numbers 17, 18, or 99. Those numbers were retired in shame. 3 entire legions, roughly 15,000 professional soldiers, were simply erased from Roman military history. In the immediate aftermath, Arminius became the undisputed leader of the Germanic resistance. Tribe after tribe rallied to him. The Romans were forced to abandon all their settlements east of the Rhine. Decades of Roman conquest were undone in a single stroke, but Rome wasn't finished. In 14 CE, Emperor Tiberius sent his nephew Germanicus with 8 legions to Germania. The wars that followed were brutal. Germanicus actually found and buried the remains of Varus's legions 6 years after the massacre. Ancient sources describe fields still littered with bones and broken weapons. Here's an unusual detail. During these campaigns, the Romans captured Arminius's pregnant wife Thusnelda. Remember, she was the daughter of Segestes, who had warned Varus. Segestes, still loyal to Rome, betrayed his own daughter to the Romans. She was taken to Rome, paraded in Germanicus's triumph, and lived the rest of her life in captivity. Her son, born in captivity, was never heard from again. Despite years of Roman campaigns, they never captured Arminius himself. In the field, he remained undefeated against Rome. But here's where his story takes a tragic turn. Around 21 CE, 12 years after his great victory, Arminius was assassinated. And here's the shocking part. He wasn't killed by Romans. He was killed by his own kinsmen. Why? Tacitus tells us that Arminius's growing power scared other Germanic nobles. Remember, Germanic society was based on rough equality among warriors. Kings were acceptable in wartime, but a permanent overlord? That was too Roman, too foreign to Germanic tradition. The man who united the tribes to defeat Rome was ultimately torn apart by the very tribal divisions he tried to overcome. It's one of history's bitter ironies. Here's an unusual fact about Arminius's historical legacy. He was largely forgotten for over 1,000 years. Medieval Germans didn't celebrate him. It wasn't until the rediscovery of Tacitus's works in the Renaissance that German scholars realized they had a homegrown hero who had defeated Rome. In the 1800s, during the rise of German nationalism, Arminius, now called Hermann, became a nationalist symbol. A massive monument, the Hermannsdenkmal, was built in 1875 near Detmold. It's still a tourist attraction today. But here's something to think about. What if Arminius had been captured or killed before the battle? What if Varus had listened to Segestes' warnings? Rome might have permanently conquered Germania. The entire map of Europe would look different today. The German language might not exist. This entire trajectory of European history hinged on one man's decision to betray his adopted homeland. So who was Arminius really? A freedom fighter, a traitor, a nationalist hero, a tribal warlord? The truth is, he was all of these things and none of them. He lived in a world where identity was fluid, where a Germanic boy could become a Roman officer, where loyalty was measured in deeds rather than blood. He used his unique position, neither fully Roman nor fully German, to achieve something unprecedented. Think about the skills this required. He had to master Roman military tactics well enough to be given command. He had to maintain his Germanic credibility despite years of Roman service. He had to forge diplomatic alliances between feuding tribes. He had to plan a complex military operation requiring perfect timing and coordination. And he had to do all of this while maintaining a perfect facade of loyalty to Varus. Here's a final unusual fact that puts his achievement in perspective. In the 500 years of the Roman Republic and Empire, only a handful of generals ever destroyed Roman legions completely. Hannibal did it at Cannae, the Parthians did it at Carrhae, and Arminius did it in the Teutoburg Forest. He belongs in the same conversation as history's greatest military commanders. But perhaps his greatest achievement wasn't military. It was psychological. He proved that Rome could be beaten, that the legions weren't invincible, that a well-planned ambush by barbarians could destroy the world's most sophisticated military machine. When you look up at the stars tonight, those same stars that ancient Romans used to navigate and time their campaigns, remember that sometimes the course of history comes down to a single person's choice. Arminius chose to remember where he came from rather than accept where Rome wanted him to go, and that choice echoes through 2,000 years of history. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Arminius's life, please like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what other ancient or medieval figures you'd like to see covered. Until next time, remember, history is written by the victors, but sometimes the defeated get the last word.